What's up, guys? It's Mr. Jamin, and today we are back for another episode of On the Contrary. And yeah, a couple reasons why I decided to start doing these and do them more consistently. One, call me, many people say, oh, Jam, you dropped some wisdom. That's not how it feels when I'm inside my own body a lot of times. Because every time I did one of these episodes, people would message me being like, yo, you know, that changed everything for me. I was, and then you know what I proceed to do? Not do another one, right? And so it's one of those things where, for some reason, I can't get through my thick skull that this matters. These stories matter, because I'm falling prey to, comparing the 300-400 views this gets to the maybe 2,000 views on a Mon's video. But if I put in context, speaking to 300 people in person, that's insane. And to potentially impact 400 people and not just looking at it as views or comparing it to anything else, even if it's the one guy, even if you're going to be the one person that needs to hear this, then our job here is done. And so more of these to come. There's so many people with insane stories of how Mons positively impacted their lives. And so we have another one today. I'm really looking forward to this one. My guy CG has one hell of a story to share with you guys. And as always, I know some of it, but I don't know the full details. So I'm going to be experiencing this in real time with you. So whatever reactions I have, or if I have questions, these are going to be just authentic and in the moment. So without further ado, you guys are about to meet CG, and I'm going to start with my first question as to how did we get here as far as the Mon stuff, all the way up to finding out about the Academy.
Well, first off, Jim, I'd like to say thank you for having me on the podcast, and thanks for reaching out. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
No problem, bro.
So, how I began my Pokemon journey, I think I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I got my first Game Boy, and I think my first game was Fire Red. And back then, and this was a long time ago, like 2003, 2004, something like that. And when I first played, I didn't know you could save the game. So, I played for an hour, hour or two, and I guess I just thought that the game automatically saved.
Yeah.
So I turned it off. And then when I picked it back up later to play again, I realized that it restarted, and I was like, what? I was like, you mean to tell me I have to beat the entire game in one sitting? I was like, I can't do that. That's insane. So then I talked to some kids at school, and they're like, no, you gotta save it.
I've never heard that before. Like, but that's a real thing. Like, it's really not that obvious. I don't even know how we discovered. But yeah, go ahead.
So I first started with Fire Red, and later I got Emerald, and Emerald was it still to this day is my favorite game of all time. I love the Battle Frontier. That's I think that's my favorite feature ever. And I played Diamond, Pearl, Platinum. Played the games, but I never played competitive back then. I didn't even know there was competitive, but back then I loved to battle. Like, I would battle my friends all the time. But
you used the link cable, or were you like Wi-Fi at that point?
Wi-Fi with the DS.
Okay.
Yeah, never did it with a Game Boy because I didn't have a link cable, and I don't think any of my friends did either.
Okay.
Yes, the trade evolutions is one of the things I like.
Never got.
Absolutely hate. Yeah.
Man. Nostalgia.
Yeah. So I played the games back then, and And then after Platinum, I don't know, I forget what year that released, maybe like 2008 or 9. So after I played Platinum, I just stopped playing Mons. So didn't play Gen 5, 6, and didn't play Gen 7. So like Pokemon was out of my life for maybe I think 7+ years. And then how I got into Pokemon again, I was in college. I think I was a junior in college, and I was in a lab. So I graduated with an electrical engineering degree, and I was taking a computer engineering course, and we were in a lab just like programming something. I forget what it was now, but one of my group members had his laptop out, and he was playing. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but he was playing Showdown, and he was playing Ranbats. And I was watching him, and I was like, "What is this? This is awesome!" I was like, "You can just." So I was asking him a billion questions, like, "So you can just load up a game and play anybody in the world at any time, and you just play a competitive battle?" And he was like, "Yeah." So then later that night, I was trying to find it because I didn't know what the website was. So I was trying to find it, and I don't know if I did, but I think I found some like Pokemon YouTubers, but not competitive ones yet. So I found a couple guys, and then I think just like watching their videos for the next couple weeks, I heard about Showdown. So then I googled that, found it, and then I think I just put in YouTube like Pokemon Showdown, and I found Pokeaim. And I think this was like 2017 or 2018. And so I started watching Pokémon videos, and then from there, that's when I learned about you, Jim. That's
I was featured on a Joey video or something, or was it like
yeah, something like that. And I really liked your perspective on the game and your thought process. And not to dunk on Blunder, but like back then, I was so new to competitive, I didn't know like how to be a good player. But watching Blunder, he just like clicks, but doesn't explain his thought process. So it was hard for me to understand why he was making the plays he was. And I really liked your style because you would break down the game at preview and like explain why you picked a lead and what was good on their team versus you, and what was good on your team versus the opponent. So I really liked the in-depth analysis. So that's what that's what got me interested into you and your channel. And I still like Blunder. I love Blunder. He's a great player.
Yeah.
But I wanted to learn the game.
Yeah, Blunder is perfect for after you gotten a bit of understanding, and it's just like entertaining and funny, and
exactly. So I realized that Blunder would be good to watch like for an entertainment, but also to watch after I had more of a grasp of what was going on in the battle. So that's how I found you. I think you were called Jamvad University?
Before I got hacked. This was before that.
Yeah, before.
Okay.
Yeah. Jamvad University, is that right?
Yeah. That's when I changed from, it was Mr. Jamvad, and then it was Jamvad University, and then...
That's right.
So the university part came when I intended to have left YouTube. So I was gonna like pretty much what the academy is now, but on YouTube, and put all the videos so that anybody, like, I basically don't want to leave the game and just have the kind of like the technical breakdown aspects. Nobody else was doing that, and so I didn't want to leave and just like, oh well, all that data is just gone. And so that's when I changed it to university. Then I didn't end up leaving, and so
so then how I got into competitive mons, or like what really brought me into competitive mons, was just watching Joey's channel, and I enjoyed watching the Showdown lives and them playing like OU or Ranbats. I
Hmm.
still love playing Ranbats now, but what really brought me in was Draft League.
Mm.
Joey playing Draft League and just having the matchup, and then you have time to prepare for the matchup,
Hmm.
and you know exactly what mons your opponent can bring, and then you can like, countermeasure for that
Hmm.
in draft. So that's the aspect that I really enjoyed.
Hmm.
So then going forward, um, I was watching one of your videos. I think this was 2019, and you
Hmm.
said you were going to open a Discord and have a draft league.
Hmm.
So I joined the Discord, and then when the draft league, the Academy Discord draft league, and that was my very first draft league.
Oh, really? Didn't you win one of those?
Yep.
Which one was it? Didn't you win a draft?
Yeah, I won the second one
The
with
second.
my guy Pichu Bros.
Okay. So was that your second
Yep.
draft league, or that was just the second academy draft league?
That was my second draft league.
So your first two draft leagues were the academy one.
Yep.
That's crazy, considering like, well, in later in the story, but yeah, um, that's crazy. That's I don't even play draft. JG was the one who suggested that when that's kind of crazy. That's cool, especially because you became
Yeah.
such a pivotal like person within the draft space of the community. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my first draft league, and like I had no idea how to draft a good team.
Hmm.
Um, and typically nowadays, how the tiering is done is each of the mons are based on a point value.
Hmm.
So from like 1 to, I think nowadays are typically like 19 points, 18, 19 points.
Hmm.
But in the Academy Draft League, the first season, it was based on tiers. So tiers 1 through 5.
Hmm.
So you had your tier 1s. And this was, I think they did I think they did Gen 8 at decks, but
Hmm.
no megas. Um, so like your round 1 mons would be like Tapu Koko and
Hmm.
Garchomp, stuff like that. Um, yeah, so my draft wasn't very good. I can't remember exactly what it was now at this point.
Hmm.
But I managed to, it was a 10-week season, and I managed to get 3 wins.
Hmm.
I think I went like 0-3 at first, and then won 3 straight,
Hmm.
and then lost the next 4.
Hmm.
But I played uh, Pichu Bros. I played him twice because we were in the same division,
Hmm.
and he smoked me twice. He 6-0'd me 2 times. Excuse me.
Hmm.
And so I gotta learn from this guy. This guy's beat my ass.
Yeah. Was he in the
I need to
academy?
learn from him. Yeah, he was.
Okay. Okay.
So I sent him a message and I was like, hey, because the academy, they allowed 2 people to be on a team.
Hmm.
So 2 people to manage 1 draft, and you could play the game together, like in a call.
Right.
Um, so that was really good for me as well. So like I could join alongside a veteran like Pichu Bros and learn from him, someone more experienced. So then when the second season came around, we agreed to be teammates, and we went 9-1, and then went on to win the championship. And so that entire season was great because like an hour or 2 before the game, Pichu and we would get on a call, and we would go over team. And what I would do was I would make like a rough draft build,
Hmm.
and then break it down to him before the match, and then like I would explain the sets to him, and then he would ask questions back, saying like uh like why do you have, what about this item on this mon over what you currently have, because I think it would do like XYZ better in the matchup. So it
Hmm.
was really great to hear from him and his thought process. And
Hmm.
then from there, in like the plugs channel, I I saw like the other draft leagues and I joined those, and then just played more and more as time went on, and now uh, I'd say I'm pretty well known within the draft community, and I've played in a lot of the top leagues like Mafia, Trick House, LD, and I played in the Smogon draft league, the team tournament last year. Right. I think it was called Draft Champions League. I played in that. I didn't do so hot. I was like 1-4 or something, 1-5. Not great, but yeah. Since then, things have kind of died down for me, just because my personal life has gotten so busy. Because I'm older. I'm 27 now.
Right.
So like I got a job, and that keeps me pretty busy. And then recently in April, my wife, she gave birth to our first child, and so that takes up a lot of my other free time.
I can imagine
as well. So now I still play draft, and I like to stay in like one to two leagues, just because I don't have any other time to do it anymore.
The fact that 1 to 2 leagues is like like little, whereas like doesn't really put it in perspective. I'm thinking you're not playing at all, but you're like, oh, 1 to 2 leagues. I'm like, wait, that's not the maximum. Yeah, that's the draft world is very cool. I like that, because it wasn't a thing. Magnitude came up with this concept, and so for it to be a format now is just like so cool to me. So I love seeing individuals inject their creativity and genius into something we already all love and all kind of get. I mean, Mon's always changing, right? But Smogon and Draft were created. Well, Draft was after the fact, but Smogon was created before VGC existed. So technically, the first competitive Pokemon format was created by the fans, not the company. So
yeah,
I think that's just insanely cool. And so yeah, the draft. You said so now you're in 1 to 2 a week, or 2 per season.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, from my standpoint, when you came to the academy, you were just like super helpful. I remember that's when the academy was actually active and alive and buzzing. You know, many people might not know, but at one point, this was probably one of the most busy servers Pokemon wise. Like, as far as like activity and just, it was just crazy. And it was probably a unique combination of the fact that it was so accessible. And by accessible, I don't even mean like, you know, you have to pay to join the Discord or something. The culture of the Discord was, the motto was pretty much any player from any point, you know, in the ladder, so to speak, could come and learn from the best. There was nowhere else where you could interact with somebody who just won Smog Tour and somebody who just started the game. Like, so even you teaming up with Peach, what was his name? Peachy
Bros.
Peach Tree Bros or Peachy Bros?
Pichu Bros. Okay. So, like, the ability to form that connection as somebody who's never played draft was what the academy was built on. Those relationships. It was like an incubator for relationships. And that's still the case. It's just that really what happened is that the draft server and the tournament servers got separated out of the main server. And because a lot of that activity was because of the tournament, well, it wasn't because of the tournament solely, but it pulled the activity outside of it. And so because of that,
drop the activity of this core server itself, and then my inconsistency and absence over time just caused for, and plus some toxic users that I allowed to roam free for too long, just really got to the point where it's just not what it was, and it will get back and be better. But also what you said, which was that we're getting older and priorities and different things. So yeah, but I remember around that time of when it was busy, you just kind of popped out of nowhere and were just offering all kinds of help, which is how you ended up becoming one of the primary dudes within that space. So what was going on from your perspective, and why were you so willing to be so helpful back then?
So I helped out starting season 2 of the draft league, because I noticed that, so I was participating, but I noticed that it would take, or the people in charge of the doc, they would, not to like shit on them or anything,
Right.
but like updating the doc would take a long time, and they would get behind like a week or two. So instead of complaining about it, I offered help, saying like, hey, like if you give me access and just show me the basics of how to maintain it, like I can upload replays and then upload the statistics into the doc, so that way like everything's maintained and updated all the time. And I think JG was like, he's like, yeah, like, we'd love to help. So from there, I think he and I got on a call that night or a couple nights later, and he showed me how to update the doc and how to maintain it. And then for the rest of the season, I think I did a majority of the updating of the doc. And then, so a little background for the Academy drafts is the first one started in January of 2020, and then the second one didn't start until I think around the same time, but in the following year, so January of 2021. So it was a long gap between the seasons, and from season 2 to 3, now that I was more involved, I think JG made me like a draft moderator. So I had access to the moderator chat. So I asked around. I was like, it had been a few months after the season 2 had ended, so I asked around and saying, hey, like, would anybody be interested in running a season 3? And there were several people like, yeah, I'd be willing to help out and help maintain things. So I took leadership and started season 3 and managed that. And season 3, I'd say, was where it grew the most, because I think we had 4 different divisions. Or no, it was 3. It was 3 back then.
I remember that. Yeah.
But
actually, no, it might have been 4. Was it? I remember.
I think it was 3.
Because the mega settlements.
The next season was 4.
Oh, okay. So
that was 4.
I got you.
Yeah, that was season 4. So season 3, that's when I first took the lead, and I started running the draft on my own, and that was still within the Academy server, so we hadn't branched out yet.
Right.
And after the finals had concluded there, then that's when we decided to, I think Devin led this, that's when he wanted to branch out the Discord. So we had the draft Discord, and then we had the what's the other one?
The Premier League one.
Premier? Yeah, the Premier League, yeah. So then that's when we branched out into those different servers. And so then season 4 and 5 were held in the Academy draft Discord. And we had 4 divisions in those as well. And season 4 was great. We had a lot of top talent from the draft league join that one, because we offered a cash prize to the winners.
Right.
So there was a lot of great play in that season, and then so seasons 1 through 4 were ran in Gen 8. I think I think the majority of them were not decks without megas, and but then for season 5 we ran that at the beginning of Gen 9, and I think we did not decks as well and allowed megas and allowed terrestrialization. But yeah, we haven't run another season yet, and there's been a lot of people asking about it, but I I couldn't lead another season. Season 5 was tough for me to run as well, just because of life,
Hmm.
and I think that was like, when did that start? I think that was like around January 2023. We started that one right after Scarlet and Violet,
Hmm.
but I haven't been able to commit enough time to run another season because, like, if I want to run something, I don't want to half-ass it. I want
Yeah.
to do a good job and be able to participate. And in season 5, that's when I was realizing, like, I don't have enough time to do this. So I don't want to. I don't want to like run a shit show and lead that. So yeah, so that's why there hasn't been another season of that.
Hmm. Okay, that makes sense. And to be fair, like, it shouldn't just be all on you, considering this is an academy extension. But just like you, I'd whenever, I guess, throughout the history of my channel, to be fair, I wouldn't say it's always because there's like some external crisis or something like that. Sometimes I'm just distracted by offline things that aren't negative. It's not like a problem, just a more enticing meal at the time. And so, I may be gone from the academy, and that's the one thing, for those who don't know about the academy: Devin, CG, JG, Divorce, all like what used to be Theo. You remember Toast? Were you here when Toast was here?
Barely.
Okay.
I think just for a little bit, yeah. But yeah, I don't remember much of him.
Okay, Toast. That brings back memories. The server went through such, like, it's been an amazing journey, truth be told. But all those people are what allow the academy to be what it is. And so it's 100%, like, it's not 100% jam. I think back then, post hack, there was just a level of a momentum. Everybody was promoting my channel because I got hacked. They're like, Joey Blender was like, yo, you're subscribed to Jam, and you're like, where did he go? This is what's going on. So people were just flooding in, and they were just like this spark of momentum starting 2020. And then obviously COVID coming in, there were just a lot of people indoors. Like, so it was just the perfect storm to create what was more like, people were just more drawn to the online space. And so it's like, none of it would exist. The draft, the ADP, all these were as a result of people in the server. Even why it still exists. And so in my absence, which I didn't account for how much just having some sense of presence was a big deal, because I treated it like this is their server. Like, I never thought of it as Jam's server. So I'm like, as long as you guys have things you're interested in, I'll promote it. I'll put the backing behind it from an attention standpoint. But it felt more like an incubator to make whoever is a part of the academy be able to do whatever they want, in a way that benefits everybody else. And I definitely dropped the ball there. So it's kind of like, okay, long-term wise, I'm not trying to make it go back to anything that it was, but how can we make it more enticing and more sort of worth the while? Sure, it's fun, but like, for the team that puts it on, so it's not just all on you or all on Devin, or like a more orchestrated thing where it's not a status game. It's not and that's one thing with the academy culture that's slightly different from another server, because in other tours and whatnot, being the tour director is sort of a status symbol thing, where the relationship between that person and whoever else, it's sort of, it's not one that's very accessible. And because of the nature of the academy culture, that's not how it's run. So in a weird way, it's almost detrimental, right? Where it's like you're not even getting the feeling that you're better than other people, which humans like, right? So it's just real.
Yeah.
So like, because the culture is not that at all, you don't even get that. So it's even more like you almost thankless, beyond just the satisfaction of knowing you just completed something that you care about. It's just like, well, how can we do better with that? And so one thing that is down the pipeline is actually physical. I'll start with the academy and then branch out, but having another sort of entity, which is the Academy Awards, which are physical representation. So you won the draft league, there's going to be like a actual, like some Hall of Fame, some component of that where it's more displayable. Still trying to figure out how can I go about that so everybody can see, oh, season 1 champion, you know, CG and Pichu, like, so it's like, how can we have that be displayable, but also when you win, this would, you know, I have to fund this, and I'm still figuring out what's the best way to do this, so this is not just like a one-time thing, but like the standard where you guys get a physical engraved medal shipped to your home, right, as champion, or a physically engraved trophy, you know, CG12. It's like so it's a physical representation beyond just a pixel of you put in all this time and effort, and that's a physical representation of a time in your life, right? A time where you did achieve something that was important to you. It's no different than if you did track in high school or something and, you know, you weren't getting paid. So it's not a, people assume like, oh, it's always about money. I don't think money motivates people as much as like a physical symbol of a particular period in their life, which is why the Olympics don't pay athletes, but every year since its inception, they train and go for the chance of a physical thing, because that's the representation of the work they put in to achieve something they cared about. So it's like, how can we bring that to the Pokemon space? Still have cash prizes and stuff, but not have it as intensive, because we have to always raise the capital for that, which, you know, I try to do with different things. That's why I have these books, and like behind the scenes, really my goal is to get, from a business standpoint, things to have such a momentum that I can just spend the money on that stuff, right? I don't publicly talk about this, but I probably should more. You know, but I don't want people to feel like, oh, it's, you know, I want them to get the product because it's good, but their money is actually going to the contribution of all that. So that's being worked on in the background as we speak. But hopefully, you know, if you do ever come back to host or to assist, you'll know that's in the works for whoever wins. And then, you know, if you ever have any ideas for how we can better support the directors, like the people putting in the time and effort, taking time away from other things they have going on in life, contribute, what are some ways that would make it feel like it was worth your while, you know?
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll definitely have to talk more about that.
For sure. I partly said it as because this is me and you are having a conversation, but I have to account for, like, there's someone listening that's never heard of any of this, and then there's a person who knows everything. And so if I talk to you like I'm talking just to you, then that whole part I would have just said the last part. But because there's somebody who doesn't have all the full picture, that's why I was I'm talking to you, but I'm also talking to them at the same time, considering who else is in the room. So that's the reason for the kind of lengthy thing. But so you ran the tour, and then we ended up doing a boot camp. So what inspired that, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty of how that started to translate into some offline matters.
Yeah, so the boot camp, I think we started that at the end of 2022, right after Scarlet and Violet were released. And so a little background to why I joined the boot camp for the listeners is because at the end of Generation 8, when I think I had a league stop in like September, and the Scarlet and Violet was planned to release in November, and I was like, okay, after this league ends in September, I'm just gonna take a break for the remaining time. That way, because at that point I was getting a little burned out from Mons. So I was like, I think a break would be good. And then when the new gen comes back, then I'll join some leagues, and then we get fully immersed in that. So with the break, after a few weeks, I'd already missed Mons, but yeah.
So I'm quitting. If I ever had $1 for every time I heard that line.
Oh no, it wasn't quitting. It was never quitting, but the plan was to always come back. But
no,
it was just
not you. I mean, throughout the years of people playing tours and getting hacked, and like the Lavos, like that particular thing has happened so many times, and they always come back. Lavos is probably one of the few that never came back, but I think it's just because he's banned. But like, that meltdown and quit and come back a million times. So that's why I chuckled when he said, I'm taking a break, and it only lasted a week. Like, we're stuck here, bro. We're stuck.
No, I held out until the new gen came out. So I did actually take like a 2.5 month break. Yeah. But yeah, I did miss Mont at just after a couple weeks. Yeah, so then the new gen came out, and so when Scarlet and Violet released, I didn't want to look at anything on YouTube. I didn't want to watch any of the videos or like look at any of the leagues on Discord just yet, because I wanted to play the game first, and be surprised when I saw the new Pokemon and try to capture that feeling as a kid of like, oh, you just encountered this new Pokemon, like I need to catch it, and then I need to use it on my team, and learn it. So I feel like I did a pretty good job of keeping myself away from that. So I played the games, I probably beat it in a couple of weeks, and then after that, that's when I joined some leagues, and I think I joined 2 leagues, I think, and did the draft, and then did a couple weeks of battles, but I felt like I was losing games that I shouldn't have, and I felt like because of the break and because of the burnout, that I just wasn't playing my old self. Like, so in draft, like you have the matchup, and you can build sets on your Pokemon to like counter team the opponent and what you anticipate them to bring. But I wasn't doing a full, like, real detailed process. It was just like, I think this set looks good in this matchup, so I'm going to bring this, without thinking, how can this set and this Pokemon enable my win condition or support the team in its in a role. So I was just building sets and throwing them together and expecting the team to function, and then going into the game and it not functioning, and
Hmm.
not having a game plan and not having a win condition and expecting to win. So I was getting really frustrated with myself, feeling like that I had like just completely fallen off on mines and that I wasn't any good
Hmm.
and
So this is you coming
beating
back.
myself up.
This is you coming back into
Yep.
the game, right? After the break.
Yes.
Okay. So that thought
So
process was because you took the break and you're like expecting to come back with the same kind of swagger, but you just weren't
yeah.
quite clicking, and so that's when the beating yourself. Okay, man.
Yep. Exactly.
Gotcha.
So after a few weeks of uh, the new leagues, and I felt like I was really struggling with the mechanic, the Terra mechanic as well.
Hmm.
Uh, so here's another uh, detail of history. So back when draft started in Scarlet and Violet, there was no Terra preview.
Hmm.
So, but like you still had to declare your Terra captains, like post draft. So, but and there was also like insane stuff rolling around. Like you could have Terra Chenpao, Terra Palafin, like absolutely wild stuff.
So wait, so I don't know. So is that just to give me a little more insight on the draft world? Are those not allowed now, or is that just does draft app Ubers? Like, what is the how do Terra captains work? Real quickly.
There are so uh there are Uber leagues, but they're not common. So like there's no but the tiering is completely different than Smogon. So there are like some Ubers in like Smogon allowed in draft, like Chiyu is allowed in draft, and
It is
typically it's allowed
allowed.
to Terra. It is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And typically Chiyu is allowed to Terra, and it's I'd say it's good. It's definitely a good mon, but it's nothing broken.
Hmm.
Just because like its base speed is 100, so like with everything being so fast this gen, it's easy to have like a couple months faster on your team than Chiyu, so you can put a scarf on them or like have like not that anything really checks Chiyu, but um yeah, I'd say the reason it's not so good in draft is because it likes to run scarf a lot.
Hmm.
That's definitely more than specs. I think just because of his like middling speed.
Hmm.
Which how crazy is it to say that a mon with base 100 speed is middling nowadays?
Hmm. And so it's a big part of it is because because a big part of like laddering and Smogon is that what you're doing is like I always say that Smogon is 80% or 70% skill. When I say skill, I mean the ability to adapt in real time, and then 30% prep, which is team building. Draft is 70% prep, and then like that 30% you have to actually be able to play, and then BGC is like 50-50. BGC is a really good mix, so your team needs to be super prepped, but you also need to be able to maneuver things. So yeah, so I'm saying like with the Chiyu situation, is it a thing of because it's so prep heavy, and in Smogon, Chiyu you can't. I mean, you can kind of prep for it, but like you don't ever fully know what you're gonna get or when you're gonna face it. So you're like, oh shoot, and you don't know what set it's gonna be. So prepping ahead of time, you're like, even if he brings the Chiyu, I know its speed. I know, so you're not preparing for everything, every possible mon. You're preparing for that particular thing, so it makes it less useful. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So I think the biggest difference between Smogon and draft is like you said, definitely the prep compared to like the actual battle and skill the prep is way more than
Right.
in draft than compared to Smogon. But also like when you build an OU team, you have to account for
Everything.
like the 30 or 40 OU mons, and then like some of the UU mons as well, because they're like good in that certain state of the metagame. But in draft, like when you're doing the draft, like when you're drafting your team, I think most leagues do like 8 to 12 mons you can draft on your team. It just depends on the league rules.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to draft a team that can account for the meta, like the meta game, or like every mon or almost every mon.
Mm-hmm.
So like so for example, say like Spectre is available, but you don't draft Spectre, someone else does. So that means that you need a normal type.
Mm-hmm.
And you need a normal type that has multiple means of dealing with Spectre. And what I mean by that is like you need multiple ghost or dark physical moves to be able to handle Spectre after a burn.
Mm-hmm.
And like for the Chi-Yu example, that means that on your team you need to draft a couple mons that have over base 100 speed, and preferably over base 110 in my opinion speed as well. So that's where draft is a little different. So like I guess so like you draft your top tier mons, like your Dragapult and like your round 2 maybe like a Greninja, something like that, or Slowking, Iron Moth, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But then you round out the bottom picks to try to help deal with the other top meta picks. So like a prime example of this would be you round out your team in like Gen 7 and 8 by drafting a Stunfisk to deal with, because it deals with so many things. It deals with Tapu Koko is one of the top mons, Zapdos, Tornadus Therian, like the electric types. It does Zeraora. It does just such a great job at dealing with those. So you would build out your team with a Stunfisk, just as an example. And like a normal type example with the Spectre example I previously gave. So that's where draft differs a lot. Like so like some of the Ubers in Smogon that are allowed in draft are like Iron Bundle. Is Landorus I Uber?
Yeah,
No?
yeah, it is.
It is, yeah. Spectre is kind of on the border, if it's allowed or not. I think most of the top leagues ban it because in the hands of a really good player, Spectre is insane. And just because Spectre also like forces every team to draft a normal type as well, that's one of the other reasons that it's banned. Chen Pao at the beginning of the meta used to be allowed, but it's not anymore. And what's crazy is that back when the gen first started, Chen Pao was allowed, but then also allowed to Terra.
So what are you?
So
that's what you're saying is that that's really devastating in the draft world. Even if you know what's coming.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So there's examples like Chen Pao is just stupid because like Chen Pao loves to run choice band, right? Because it kills everything or two shots everything without Terra. But then you Terra it, that way you can like maybe I don't know, for example, say like you choose to Terra your Chen Pao to Ghost that week because your opponent has a Dragonite and you don't want to take the E-speed to be revenged. So there's some mods where it's a lot harder to deal with them, so they are banned. And then others like Chi-Yu, that's an Uber and Smogon, but it's allowed because there are outs to it. Like if it does get the opportunity to come on the field freely, then it is probably getting a kill, but you still have outs versus it, if that makes any sense, just because of its speed.
Okay, it does make sense. Gotcha.
No, like Terra Palafin that used to be allowed back in the day too, which is just insane because the reason that Palafin is so good is because Jet Punch is priority and it's 60 base power, whereas most other priority moves are like 40 base power. And because Palafin has a broken attack stat with 160, so and then also its bulk is crazy too. It's like 197 and like 80 something defenses, so that's insanely good. And then it has a usable special attack stat too, like base 106, and then its speed is good too with 100.
I didn't know special attack was that high. Jesus.
Yeah. So so some of the sets that that used to go around were like throat spray boom burst for like a Dondozo matchup, because people would draft Dondozo to deal with Palafin, so Palafin started running like throat
Crazy
spray
stuff.
boom burst, or
Yeah.
yeah. You're able to do stuff like that in draft, whereas Smogon, you just run Banded Palafin or like the
Right.
bulk up set. But in draft, you have to account for Banded, bulk up, and then special or scarf. So you have to count for so many different things. Yeah. So going back to my story with the frustration. So one of the leagues I joined, I didn't draft the team. The team was drafted by someone else, and then they dropped, so I filled in, and so I decided to try their team for just a few weeks. So typically, when you replace someone as a coach in draft, you have the opportunity to make like unlimited transactions. So that means you can like completely change up the team for free. Whereas normally, if you are in the draft from before the drafting phase to post draft, then you only have 5 transactions for the whole season. But because I was new to the meta, I wanted to try out this person's team and just see because it looked pretty good, and just see how things were going. But yeah, so what I'm trying to say, like the meta was very chaotic back then, with allowing like Terra, Chen Pao, which is completely broken because like in draft, just regular Chen Pao is broken because Bandit is still enough to be OP. But with Terra, like you could be Terra Dark or Ice, and then like instead of things being 2-shot, they're just killed. They're just dead, and there's nothing you can do. Or like the things that would check Chen Pao. So for example, like Azumarill or Primarina, something that resists both of its stabs. You can run like Terra Poison or Terra Electric, and then now you can freely, and you don't have to be banded. You can be like Life Orb or Boots, and then you can click, your Crunch or Icicle Crash into those mods. But then you click your Terra Blast, and then you kill them. So then the what should be a check is no longer a check. And so that's what made like Chen Pao so broken. And then same with Palafin, like people would just run Terra Water, and like something's dying, like it's a wave crash, and then Jet Punch, and because Jet Punch is such a great means of revenge killing, which is so important in draft, Palafin was just too much with Terra. So typically Palafin is allowed, but not with Terra. But also back then, something like Terra Dragonite was allowed as well, which is super broken in draft because of Dragonite's setup ability with Dragon Dance and its ability multi-scale. So being able to Terrasilize and get rid of that 4x ice weakness makes Dragonite so tanky, and with multi-scale and Roost, it just makes it so ridiculous. And because it has such great coverage, and then obviously the extreme speed, so the Terra Normal E-speed sets were super broken as well.
Yeah.
So that had to go. So all this rambling to say that the metagame was in like chaos in the initial stage of Scarlet and Violet draft. So I was really struggling. So that's when I reached out to you, and I wanted to join the boot camp just to learn what can I do better, and how can I go through the proper steps to becoming a better player, and like starting from ground zero and working my way up again. So that's how we got to talking, and we did the boot camp for 4 weeks, and you introduced me. Well, actually, I knew this person briefly before I working with him in the boot camp, and that being Zazo. And for those who don't know, Zazo is he's one of the best draft players ever. Like easily top 5, and in my opinion, he's one of the probably top 2.
Right.
like hands down,
Yeah, for sure.
just from my opinion. So, but I had known Zazo before. Um, we had been in calls and talked before and messaged, and he's an incredible guy. He,
Hmm.
back before the boot camp, he he'd like he would respond to messages and like take the time to explain things. So he was really nice. But then in the boot camp and working with him, it was really great to hear his perspective of draft, and it really helped me. So after the boot camp, or after each lesson within the boot camp from you and Zazo,
Hmm.
I felt rejuvenated and it built up my confidence. And whereas before my confidence was completely shattered and felt hopeless and felt like I was the worst player ever.
Yeah,
So
in there.
so going to you guys and talking with you guys and YouTube breaking down my replays like at each phase, and like we'd start at preview and you would break down my draft games as well, which is
Mhm.
something that I really appreciated. And I don't know if you had done much before at that point.
I've had draft. I've trained draft. I don't. It's not something I play super often, so it's not something I market a ton. But what we were doing, what happened was Zazo focused with you on the draft particular stuff, and I focused more with you on the in actual battle decision making, because that's
Yep.
the one thing I'd say with draft players is that because such a big percentage of it is team building and preparation. Oftentimes they think their prep is the issue, and I've observed like, oh no, your prep was actually good, but you made like 14 different poor decisions in the actual battle itself. So if you don't know the distinction between whether it's a building problem or it's a skill problem, that's gonna just rob you of so much progress. And so what my thing with you was to teach you how to actually make the right choices per turn. What's the structure and question asking structure and things of that nature. And then Zazo took on the more technical mindset of draft and how to look at a situation, the how of draft specifically. I don't know if you remember us going over like, okay, I'll focus more on this part.
No, I do. And just asking the questions that you always preach of like, the draft is a little different, so but you still ask yourself the same questions during the building phase. Is like, what can I guard against?
Right.
So what is the best Pokemon that the opponent has versus you, and then how do I guard against that, or how do I revenge kill that Pokemon, or how do I deal with this Pokemon? Is there any like one-time option that I can do? But then like, what's your objective? So, but the most important thing that I learned from you and Zazo is, what's your win condition? First, start building with your win condition. And then what Zazo taught me was, so start with your win condition, what you think can win the game, the end game. And then you do calcs versus every single one of the opponent's Pokemon, just to see like what percent those Pokemon need to be at in order for that Pokemon to win the game.
Right.
And then from there, from that point, you ask yourself, so say Pokemon A needs to be at 60% in order for my win condition to knock it out. Then how can I lure in Pokemon A and get 40% of damage on it?
Right.
But that's what really helped me, was just, it sounds silly to say, but it's a simple question, but it's not something that I thought about before.
It's not silly actually, because if you think about just any other venture, like everything complicated, quote unquote, can be built up to with using bricks of simple questions. Like even if you talk to like a rocket scientist or something, he's gonna be like, the first thing we consider when we're gonna, building a rocket is. Where are we going? Right? Like we think it's some like some crazy thing, but it's like something simple. And the foundation of most things are built on simple questions. You being an engineer, I'm sure it's no different, right? Like, sure, things can get complicated the more questions. Maybe the answer to the question is where the complexity comes, but the question that's asked is not the complicated part. The question is usually simple. The solution is usually where we get into the complexity of it all. So most things, even Mons, it's just learning. How do I know what's the correct question to ask, the best question to ask? And a lot of times you already know the answer. So it's training people on how to ask the question, or what. So the most efficient perspective or lens to view this thing through. So far from it, bro, because me and Zazo have been in this game for quite some time, and it took us quite some time. There was no us, there was no academy. So you flopped around until you struck gold.
Yep.
Far from stupid question.
Yeah, so so just asking those questions really helped my building and improved my building significantly, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like, okay, I want to. So typically in Scarlet Violet, how I like to build is, or how I like to draft is, I like to have like a mon that can set up, typically with like Dragon Dance or like a booster speed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, or like have a certain choice scarf mon that can win the game by clicking a button. But so yeah, so I like to draft a win condition, or mon that can typically be a win condition.
Mm-hmm.
So I would start there, and then like I said, do the calcs and see what things need to be at, and then rather than just like building sets that looked good in the matchup, now my process changed from, okay, so I need this Pokemon at this, I need to get this percentage off of this Pokemon. How can I do it? So then it's like I would look at my team and say, well, my Pokemon B can lure in their Pokemon A that I need weakened, and I can get damage on it by using this move and keep that damage on it,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore allow my win condition to win the game. And then I would also, you guys also told me to look at like what can your win condition set up on
Mm-hmm.
as well. So like then also take the step to think about before the game, which Pokemon can your win condition take advantage of
Mm-hmm.
at the right time, and then just be over
Mm-hmm.
at that point. So you guys just taking the time and breaking down the right questions to ask before the battle really helped me out, really helped me with my prep. But then also during the battle, you and Zazo would go through the battles with me, and that was extremely helpful as well, saying like, I remember one game we reviewed,
Mm-hmm.
and
I think I remember the one you're talking about. But go ahead.
Yeah, the Zero Aura.
With the
Zero Aura one.
Okay, I think, was that the one with the Azumarill on it?
No,
Okay,
different one.
okay.
That's a different one. But it was like, so yeah, we started the game, I opened the replay, and you're like, okay, what's the biggest threat on our team? And like, I just didn't think about that with draft. I was like, I know what's threatening to me, but like picking a lead, I never thought about that. And that was something that Zazo also taught me that has been extremely important, and now is imperative to my building, is building a lead
Mm-hmm. that
can handle the biggest threat from the opponent, but also a majority of the others,
Mm-hmm.
the other Pokemon on its team. But I just remember you asking me that question, and I was like, I just never even thought about that. I was just always thinking like, oh, this Pokemon is generally good versus them, so I'm gonna lead it. And then I remember a few games over my career
Mhm.
where like I kind of knew what the biggest threat was versus me, but I wouldn't pick a lead to beat it, and then they would lead their biggest threat, and then they would just get a kill turn one. So asking that question and then preparing for that really helped me
Isn't it
in my,
interesting though?
my
Like,
process.
but
Yeah.
that's check it out. Like that's one question. We didn't teach you
Yeah.
any new information. It's not like you didn't know what's there already. And that's the like
Yeah.
uh to put it in perspective, like in any given critical thinking moment, right? As an engineer, all problems are puzzles. I think if we think about Mons in terms of a puzzle, what you're doing as a draft league is there's because when we think of problems, the term itself just feels like there may be an answer, there might not be an answer. When we encounter a problem, built into the term is there may be no answer, even though that's technically impossible, right? You can't have a one-sided coin. But basically what we're saying is that even if there is an answer, I'm not certain that I'm capable of finding it, or I'm capable of getting the answer, or if I know of the answer, I don't know what to do to get the thing. But if we think of it as a puzzle, which is a puzzle is the same thing as a problem. The only thing is inherently with the term puzzle, we know that every puzzle has built into it an answer. So if you think about a team preview instead of a problem to solve, is as a puzzle, and there are multiple ways to solve a puzzle, right? So if I said, give me something that adds up to 4, there are infinite ways you could do that. You could say -5. 5 minus 1. You could say 2 plus 2. You could say 1 plus 1 plus 1. And then you could go into the negatives. You could say 5 plus 0. Did I say 5 or 4? One of them. 4 plus 0. And there are infinite ways on the other side of the equation to solve the puzzle called 4. So similarly at Team Preview, there's the puzzle called win. Right? Winning.
Yeah.
But you could do it by leading with blank. You could do it by, there's so many ways. And then there are ways that are better than others. Because you could do it by setting up the puzzle to where I'm going to take the route. I'm going to solve this puzzle in the way that I have to hit Focus Blast to win. And so a lot of times we get stuck in it like, I missed the Focus Blast, that's why I lost. But if you perceive it as a puzzle, you're like, was there a way I could have solved this puzzle where I never had to use Focus Blast? And in the replay, it's going to require you getting the tears out and the frustration out and the anger and screw-mons. And once you get over that part and you can look at the replay objectively, a lot of times you'll notice, there were like 3 different ways I could have not had to use Focus Blast. And not talking like hindsight bias. I'm talking like just better questions up front. I led into Sactamon turn 1. That probably could have been different. Or I took this risk when I had a whole check right there. That could have been different. And those little things are the key. But all of it starts from a question. First, you have to determine the situation. And you see what your options are. Then you find the solution. Every puzzle works the same way. So it's just for the audience. Again, we went to the boot camp, and this is hopefully not new information for you. But as you're sharing, because we're equivalent of being on a stage right now, and then there's this big audience listening to us speak, I wanted somebody who was like, maybe like, oh man, that was a big insight that DG just shared. And I wanted to add a bit more meat so that they can go, oh, bingo. Now I grasp that and I can apply it so that they can be better too.
I think the most important things that you and Zazo taught me were just to use the KISS method, the keep it simple, stupid method of just don't overcomplicate things. Just ask yourself a list of questions like, what's the what's the biggest threat on their team? How do you deal with it? What's the biggest threat you have on your team to the opponent? How can you take advantage of it? And then always keeping in mind of your game plan and your win condition. And that's really helped me as well. And then also the replay analysis as well has really helped me in just trying to watch the replays objectively. Team preview, breaking down what you initially expected your opponent to bring and how do you deal with it. And I just mean the six that are on screen. So like at team preview, not during the building phase.
Right.
And then like, did you bring the correct mons that in that matchup versus the six that they brought? Like, could you have brought a different mon that would have been better just looking at team preview based on what the opponent brought, and then going through each turn and asking yourself, like, did I make the best play every single turn? So like on lead you have 6 options, so that's actually a little easier. But then during turn 1 you have many more options. You have the 4 moves your Pokemon can use, and then you have your 5 Pokemon that you could switch into. So you yourself, every turn that every Pokemon is alive, you have 9 options. But then you also have to take into consideration the 4 moves that your opponent can select, and then the 5 Pokemon that they could go into as well. And something that Zazo taught me to help go through that process to make it faster is, what can't I do? Ask yourself the question, what can't I do? That helps speed up the process. So what I mean by that is, say your opponent has Chi-Yu, and then say you have a team, just to simplify the explanation, say you have a team of 5 grass types and 1 water type, and you have a grass type out in the field. So then when you're trying to go through all the options, ask yourself, what can't I do? So then it's like, can I go out into Venusaur? Well, no. Can I go into Victory Bell? No. And so it just helps.
The fact that you have a Venusaur and a Victory Bell on the same team is it's a greater concern. But, yeah, I get you.
But just asking that question of what can't I do helped speed up.
I love that
process of asking that question.
Love that.
Or answering that question.
I'm gonna have to steal that from Zazo and credit him, because I've never considered that before. Because that's a blind spot, as you've done. Like that's something like a hidden question that you don't know you ask, because it's just an implied. You can't go to V. So you never consciously realize when you're sharing and teaching that to someone that their brain doesn't see as clearly the what can't you do as you do. So they're actually overwhelmed with all the options, where as the teacher, you're only considering 3 of them, because the other 6 are obviously not options. But they're only obvious because you've been, right, like, so that's a really, this entire podcast is worth it already. That question right there as a tool to help the players. But another aspect to the boot camp, because I remember asking, and I think you were probably the first person I ever offered this to. I don't remember why. I don't remember if either in our first session we kind of talked about it, and then I let you know that sometimes people do the boot camp for non-Mons reasons, and some people do it for Mons reasons. And because you had 2 conundrums at the time, there were the Mons stuff, and then there's the stuff that really starts the second half of the story. And you said, I want a mixture. I remember that. And so what was going on other than the Mon stuff? That was a big moment are some things you took away from that boot camp that made where you are now so great?
So yeah, so at that time, I was also really struggling with work. Um, it was very difficult for me, where I felt like, well, I just wasn't enjoying work, and I felt like I wasn't. Well, I just wasn't enjoying the task that I was being assigned, and the biggest difficulty that I was facing was, um, I'd have the setup at the work was also pretty ridiculous, where we had our one manager in the US, but and they were called like a functional manager. So like if you just needed anything immediately, you could go to them. But then you had your like working manager in France.
Mm-hmm.
So like but your working manager was supposed to give you like all your assignments to do,
Mm-hmm.
and like your functional manager should not have had any say over like your assignments
Mm-hmm.
and your priorities. But the issue I was facing, because obviously that's going to go wrong, um, was we would be working on a project or a task in the US with my US manager, and then report that week to our working manager in France,
Mm-hmm.
and she'd be like, "Why are you doing that? That's not your job. You don't need to be doing that." And I was like, "Yeah, that makes sense, because like I'm not able to provide any information or what's being asked, because that's not within my roles and responsibilities, and like I have no it's just extremely hard for me to find any answers or to get anywhere with what they're asking me to do for this project, because I'm not the right person."
Mm-hmm.
But then my US manager would be like, "Well, we got to do it. They're asking us, so we got to do it." And it it was really frustrating, because we would get yelled at a lot by the people we were helping out, because it was kind of like so it was in a pilot plant,
Mm-hmm.
so not like a full on manufacturing line, but a pilot line. So that means that it's like it's almost the same setup, but it's to test and find any issues in the line
Mm-hmm.
for before it's in the full on manufacturing line.
Right.
Um, because you don't want to find any issues in the real manufacturing line, because that can cost the company like tens of thousands of dollars
Mm-hmm.
every minute the line is down. So that's why they have the pilot line.
Right.
Um, so it was just really frustrating, because we weren't able to me and my team weren't able to like really help or support, but we were being forced to do so. So it was really it was really difficult. And so I was also struggling with work, and I was like applying to new jobs, and the job market was really hard, and it's still going on now, where companies are saying they're hiring and they're actually not. Like you do interviews, and then you feel like you did well, and then you get ghosted, or
Mm-hmm.
you just don't, or they tell you no,
Mm-hmm.
and then you ask why, and they're like, "Well, like you did a great job, but yeah, you meet all the qualifications, but you're just you're not hiring you." So that was tough as well. So then later, so my job for the company was a validation engineer for battery packs.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is we have a full list of testing that the battery packs need to go through in order to and have to pass in order to release them and use them in certain markets. So like the European market, the US market, and the China market,
Mm-hmm.
or the Asia market.
Mm-hmm.
So my job was to get all the test procedures and criteria for my program, the battery pack, and work with the test house to get the pack up and running at the test house. Make sure that the pack was communicating. There weren't any issues going on, and that the test house had everything they needed. And if they had any issues, then I would respond to it and resolve it and help get the test back up and running. But
Mm-hmm.
the issue, it was that's also another kind of a that also kind of explains why we should have nothing to do with manufacturing line in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue I was having, aside from the manufacturing line issue, was I was just unable to get any answers from my colleagues for testing. So like, like I'd written the entire procedure, and I just needed like a couple of answers,
Mm-hmm.
like really quick answers, just of like specific currents or charge rates or like temperatures or time for the test
Mm-hmm.
from different engineers responsible for that information. And it was like pulling teeth out to get answers. It was just so incredibly difficult, and there was just no support.
Mm-hmm.
So the program was in its last year in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And typically programs last 4 years, and validation is the last. And you test two samples. You test a prototype build,
Mm-hmm.
which does not have production parts, and then you test a production intended part pack. And we had not started any testing, and the start of production was in November, and it was May. And some of the tests, they take like a year to complete,
Mm-hmm.
while the majority of the other ones take just a few months. But I had not gotten any support or answers,
Mm-hmm.
or like the procedures. So like I wasn't able to give anything to the test house, and we also didn't have packs either to perform testing. So that was another obstacle, and it was really challenging. And we were able to get a couple things up and running, the long-term tests in like May and June. And but I would report to this one guy. He was like a level or two above me,
Mm-hmm.
and he would just see how the validation was going and what the issues were, and I would just make him aware and let him know the status of how things were going and like what help I needed, and then like the percent completion of the test.
Mm-hmm.
So I would report to him, and then he would report it to his management, and then like I had no communication with his management. It was just through this one guy. And then he left in September, and 3 months away from production. And so his management contacted me and said, hey, he's been filling out this PowerPoint for the validation progress. Could you start filling out this information just every Friday and send it to me, and then just send me a message saying, hey, you sent it and you updated it, and then let me know like what issues are going on. So I was like, yeah, okay, I can do that, no problem. So I filled out the PowerPoint with the progress and sent it to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5 minutes later, he contacts me and he says, I need to call you right now. And I was like, oh no, this is not good.
Mm-hmm.
So he calls me,
are you at
and he says,
are you at a physical location at this point, in terms of, are you within that factory, or are you like work from home kind of situation?
I was kind of hybrid, so I would go into the office,
Okay.
or like a couple days a week I would work from home. But this guy, the guy in the upper management, he was in Italy. He's based out of Italy.
Okay.
So yeah, but I'm local to the test house. So like I could drive down to the test house and
Okay.
See how things are going. Like I just like be able to see things with my eyes and like do things physically as well.
Okay.
So he calls me and he says, how is it that the completion rate can decrease from this week to last week. I said, pardon? What do you mean? And he said, well, last week, this test was 50% complete. And now you're saying it's at 10% complete.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would say, this other test, last week, it was at 30% complete. And now you're saying it hasn't even started testing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, holy shit. This guy has been lying to management. This guy that just left the company,
Mm-hmm.
he's been lying about the progress to management to make it look like things have been going well, when in reality, a lot of the things haven't even started, or they're much further back than what he was reporting. So I realized that it was an extremely bad situation. So and I had been wondering, like, why hadn't anybody been reaching out or supporting, like, hey, we're really close to start a production. And, I know, because I'm like boots on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what the actual status is and how far behind we are. But because of the discrepancy of what the management was receiving, they didn't think that there was any issue.
Mm-hmm. So you were able to communicate to them as well? Or did you have to communicate to the guy who was communicating with them?
So before the guy left, I was communicating through him, and then he was reporting to the management.
Okay.
But then when he left, I was reporting to the management directly.
Okay, and that's when the truth came about.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yes. So then I think the next couple of days, I was in meetings with people who were like insanely high up in the company, like
Mm-hmm.
like directors, and I'm just a lowly like base engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having meetings with directors, people who are like 5-6 levels higher than me, and then the director's boss, the director's boss's boss,
Mm-hmm.
like, and then the person who's directly beneath the vice president. And I was just getting peppered with questions of like, why isn't this done? What happened? Why were we being reported this old document that has these statuses, but then you're reporting that like things aren't even started, or they're like not at the percentage complete that we had thought that they were. So I had to handle all those questions and all that heat.
Mm-hmm.
And so then everyone, like, that's when I finally got a bunch of support. But it was crunch time. Like, we had 2 months left to go until production, and we had to complete so many things. And so I was being attacked internally. So then they also went to the test house, and they were like, why, like, what's wrong? Like, why aren't you able to get things up and running and on test? And then the test house also threw me under the bus, saying like, oh, well, it's Calvin or CG.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Calvin.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, he's not providing us with the test procedures, and he's not providing us with packs. And as I said before, like, I was waiting on information from people for several months, and had escalated it within my management that like I needed this information and I needed these parts, and wasn't getting it. So I was being attacked from both sides, and it was very serious, because you don't want to be the reason that a vehicle has a delayed start of production. Like, that's a huge deal in the automotive industry. So it was a very difficult time for me, and I was really frustrated because I had felt like I had been doing the best job that I was, and I'd been doing everything right, and then I just get bombarded all of a sudden. Felt like you're stabbed in the back too. Stabbed in the back and then pushed to the ground and then kicked a few times. That's what I had felt like.
And so you, at this point, you probably felt like the only one, even though you were surrounded by people. You're probably a very lonely moment, right?
Yeah, it was extremely hard. But now that everyone knew what the situation was, that's when I finally got the support that I needed, and it was like people went into overdrive to get things done. So then we got parts, we got the questions answered that I needed for the procedures. We were able to get things up and going on test, and there were some kinks in there, like we failed the test or two, and then we had to determine what the root cause of the issue was, and then we had to retest it, and yeah, there was a lot of very difficult work after that point because of the time crunch that we were up against. And like it got to the point where my senior manager was heavily involved, and that's very atypical because so like I'm on the validation team and I'm just a validation engineer, so then I report to my team lead, and then my team lead reports to our manager, and our manager oversees like a few different parts of validation. So like within my team, we were responsible for electric vehicle battery packs, and then our manager oversaw us, and then also oversaw validation testing for engines as well. So different programs and different types of programs. And then our senior manager like oversees several different programs as well. So our senior manager realized the issues that were going on, so he came in to support, and absolutely love that guy for all of his work. And I remember in one meeting where the test house was like being very difficult on me, saying that I wasn't providing them with information, and my senior manager stood up for me and he said, let's not all throw this on Calvin. He was like, it's everyone's responsibility, not just his. So
that's amazing.
That moment gave me some confidence too, and it felt like I had finally had some support as well.
Right.
So after that point, it was like, okay, I'm gonna run through a wall for this guy.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, just how one sentence can change your perspective and your feelings of how the situation is going. But still really frustrated with how everything was going, and I was looking for like other jobs, and after about a month and a half, like a majority of the testing that we needed to do had been completed, or it had been far enough in progress that we were okay for production. And I got a call from another company saying they wanted to interview me. So I was like, yeah, I'm available this time.
And
And
this was something
joined the interview.
completely unrelated. You didn't put in applications. Like, how did this come about?
Yeah, I don't think I put in an application, and they just contacted me. They said, hey, we came across your resume and we'd be interested to interview you.
How does that?
So
was it like a previous when you were applying or something, like, or is this just like the worst when people are trying to take people from other companies? They're like, oh, I came across your resume. I'm like, resume? When did like?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they like found me on LinkedIn and
okay,
like, and that's how and that's how they found me, or like maybe someone like mentioned.
I was gonna say maybe somebody was
I don't know.
speaking well of you somewhere, and I don't know.
Yeah,
because of the good work you were putting in and dealing with all the BS. So, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, because that's interesting that you asked that, because right before, like a day before the interview, I was trying to prepare and see what the job was that I was interviewing for. And I couldn't find any information, and I was like,
right.
I was like, wait, I've been interviewed with this company, but I haven't applied to anything. I was like, I don't even know what the job is.
Isn't that crazy? They're like,
I was like, what? How's this gonna go? So I joined the interview, and I just had a piece of paper out because I was like, usually in interviews, the first thing they say is like, you're interviewing for this position, right? And then just say, yeah. So like I had the piece of paper out, and then when they said you're interviewing for this position, I wrote it down. I was like, yep, sure. Um, and I thought the interview went well. Like there was a good back and forth, and I felt like I was answering the questions really well, and it felt like we had, a good connection, and that they had, and that they liked me, and then the interview ends, and I asked some questions back as well, and then the interview ends, and I looked down at the clock, and it had only been like 15 minutes, and I was like, oh, damn, I was like, this is not good. I was like, because typically, for those who don't know, interviews typically like 30 minutes to an hour, 30 minutes minimum. So when I saw that it was 15 minutes, I was like, oh no. I was like, oh, they didn't like me. They, even though that, I thought that things had went well before I looked at the time, after I looked at the time, I was like, oh no, like I'm not gonna hear back from them. They didn't like me just because, they asked me so many or so few questions. And, and like it didn't take as much time that I had thought that it would. So then, after that, I was like, yeah, probably not gonna hear back from them. So, didn't even think about it. And then the next day they send me an offer. And this was the first offer that I had received this whole time. And, I'd been applying to jobs right and left for the previous like 6 months or so. And, gotten several interviews, and felt like several of the interviews went better than this one for the offer had gone. So I was very shocked to see the offer, or to receive the offer. So then I, negotiated and then signed the offer. And then a couple months later, I joined the new company. But I did see through the completion of the testing with my previous company. So I felt like I had left it in a pretty good state. And I felt like the entire time, like I did not burn any bridges with my former company, because like I know, I've seen how important that can be, is just to keep a good connections with your colleagues and your management. And I remember when I told so we got a new manager right before I left my former company. And when I kind of felt bad for him, because it seemed like he was going to be a good manager, and he was really, really organized, and he was a very direct communicator, and like he was very good at like pushing people. So I remember like one time I had an issue, and he reached out to that person immediately and was like, hey, Calvin needs this information right now. And then I got the information right away, and I was like, wow, damn, that's awesome. So I felt like the new manager was good. So I was kind of sad to tell him that I was leaving. So like I wanted to get the point across to him when I told him, like, it's not because of you. It's just that I've received a really good offer that I couldn't pass down. Then he told, I didn't, he was the only person I told, because I also wanted to do like my own like social experiment and see how fast or how many people the news would travel to. So then like right away, right after that, there were like, I had several people reach out to me and be like, what, you're leaving? and then the senior manager, he reached out to me as well. And I made it clear that, I told him before I left that I wanted to see him in person and talk to him. And I talked to him I saw him in person my last day. That was the only time he was available. And I went up to him and shook his hand, and I said, thank you for the experience, and the time that I worked here, and thank you for jokingly saying like thank you for putting up with me. And but then I told him about that story about him standing up for me, and I said, that was the hardest time in my life, and to have your support and your backing at that moment meant so much to me. And it gave me the confidence to keep my head up and to continue to push. So I just told him that. And I told him that I respected the hell out of him for doing that. But now with this new position, I've been in it for 8 months at this point, and it's great. The communication is excellent within the company, and all my colleagues are great. My management is phenomenal, and often my manager, he'll get on me about not asking him enough questions because he wants me to be more of an expert within the field, and it's also within battery related. I'm a quality engineer, and he wants me to be more knowledgeable in the battery cells and the chemistry and just how the different components work. So all this to just say that the people out there, that I feel like you need to go through adversity. You need to go through a hard time to see who you really are and to see who really has your back and supports you. I also want to thank my wife for that time as well. She was so great and excellent in supporting me as well. But I think everyone needs to go through hard times like that to see who they are and to see how they handle adversity and hardship and how they respond. And then to also know that it's not going to last forever, even though it feels like it does. And that you can get through it if you keep your head down, keep your head up, keep pushing and keep working to get past that. And that there is hope and a light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. And to kind of I want to, because the key about this, I'm going to bring something back to your memory. So I'm going to reply to this message that pops up. The audience won't be able to see this part because it's on Discord, but whenever somebody would be admitted to the boot camp, I'd go through sort of this series of questionings so we can narrow down exactly what's important to them, so that I could customize the training specifically for that. And what you're looking at was, so this was the 12th, December 17th, 2002, 3 p.m. And the first question on it, as you know, is if you're 100% honest with yourself, what outcomes do you want? Right? Because I'm here to serve you. People pay me to solve their problems or help. Well, I'm not solving your problem, but like I'm here to help you along the journey to get to where you want to go. Right. And so just pit stop and say, okay, you answered, I want to be a really consistent player. I want to be able to play well in all matches. I want to be able to think clearer and deeper during my matches and not turn off my brain and click. Mind you, this is what you wrote before the Zazo training, before any of that had happened, right? And you were just telling the journey of how many those questions and how replay reviews. Then the second thing you said, my end goal is to be considered one of the best draft league players ever. And then for me, I think it's 3: sporadic motivation. The sort of things that are stopping you. Sporadic motivation, feeling of mental block and the yips, if you will, and not enjoying my job. He said, I feel like that I feel that when I play, I'm inconsistent. Sometimes I'll randomly throw a game that I've won because I'm not fully paying attention to the battle. Sometimes a lack of motivation makes my prep bad as well because I don't think through everything the opponent will bring, and then I'm caught off guard during the match for something I didn't prepare for. And then you said, I'm not currently not enjoying my job because my team lead is accepting work that my group should not be doing. And I'm being blamed for things not being done well when it's not something I should be doing to begin with. And so, what is it now? It's almost 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Almost 2 years later, things are different. And one of the key things that I'd like for the audience as we close out to hear was the actual process of me and you going about that. We kind of skipped over it, but remember there was a period where this was not your initial career pivot. Initially, you had other requirements that you were looking for. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Right? You were considering it like, actually, I like working with people and I want something more face to face. And you considered physical therapy, but you're like, I'd have to go back to school and I don't have that kind of time. And, I have my son coming up, like marriage, so you had all these constraints. So I know the journey seemed a lot more linear, but that was a key part of disarray in the middle. So what happened through that and was the convert where because I think I know we went through that questionnaire, and I believe I gave you the resistance release exercise as well. I was like going through the chat, but if you could give a bit more insight as to how you managed to navigate that particular period, because you were emitting and desiring a new position, but also we're like, am I gonna have to start over from scratch with my family depending on me and things like that?
Yeah, that was a tough time. But the best piece of advice I can give is to say you can control. The only thing you can control is how you feel and how you respond to situations. The old cliche. So, like, as terrible as work was going for me back then, even predating the whole testing catastrophe, is that just to keep a positive mindset and to show up with a good attitude and to continue to do the best you can each day. But then also from the professional side, to document everything possible and be extremely organized, so that way when situations like the testing catastrophe do show up, you have evidence to what they call CYA, cover your ass.
Mm-hmm.
Just to show that you have been putting in effort and that you're not all to blame. So yeah, just trying to cover yourself, but also show up with a good attitude and attempting to do your best every day. So to get from that point to now, I think the biggest thing that I had to do was just to gain more work experience, because at that time when I had sent that message, I had only had maybe a year and a half of work experience, so not too much. And nowadays companies, they want not only want you to have a degree, but then also for an entry-level job, they want you to have 10 years of experience. So
oh shoot,
the only thing you can do is just to work, just to continue to work and build relationships and and do your best. So I think that's just what I would say. But I'm actually glad that I went through the testing catastrophe, because I learned so many things from it. Not only just the testing aspects and how things needed to be done, and especially in a crunch time, but also how the tests are performed and conducted, and then how to process the data. So I think all that was extremely important for me to learn, and it has added my career that I have that knowledge and that background now. So I'm actually glad that I was able to face that trial and not leave before then, because I feel like it would not be as good as an engineer that I am today without that experience.
Mm.
Um, so also you brought up the physical therapy point. Yeah, so originally when I was in school, I think it was my last year, my fourth year, not my last. I took 5 years to graduate, probably because of this, because I wanted to do physical therapy when I was, almost complete with an electrical engineering degree, and I was still, the plan then was to still graduate with a degree, but then to go into physical therapy school afterwards. So as a like postgraduate degree. So it's not a doctor's. It is the doctor's degree. It would have been a doctor of physical therapy, but it's not like a medical doctor. If that makes any sense
Mhm.
to anyone. Um, so it was quite a change. So I needed to take some prerequisite courses. So I had completed all those, and then applied to several different physical therapy schools, and then COVID hit. So I was planning to go to physical therapy school, and when I graduated in 2020, so I'd done all my applying in 2019, and then COVID hit in May, and then all the programs and schools they put everything on pause, and so I wasn't going to get into, or wasn't going to be able to perform or participate in physical therapy school because of COVID. So that added another wrench into life. So so I had to stick with engineering. Um, and so the reason I wanted to do physical therapy in college, and I didn't want to do engineering, was because I'd realized that engineering was a lot of just sitting behind a desk and uh, typing and like working on the computer, and I wanted to be more hands-on. So that's when I discovered physical therapy and wanted to pursue that, and I had a true passion for it. But not being able to do it, and then also, as you said, the constraints of being married, and then also the financial burden that would have been going through 3 years of physical therapy school. It was going to be very difficult. But with the support of my wife as well, we were able to. I was able to get some like odd jobs my first year after graduating. I was a math tutor for quite some time before I got my first engineering job, and then things have just taken or gone on from there after that first engineering job. And now um, I still currently sit behind a computer a lot, but because I enjoy so much of what I do now, that uh, I it's not so much of a burden. But now that, because I'm in the industry, I can see what jobs I want to go into within engineering as I go on in my professional career.
Mhm. Amazing. Amazing. I am so happy that I remember, us having those calls and trying to mastermind some way of navigating, right, while dealing with the
Mhm.
emotional weight. of it all. And honestly, looking back, given the situation, for you to have taken the boot camp at that time, it's an interesting parallel. You know, many people have done it. You know, when we look back and reflect, because most people, if not everyone, has, you know, become people who message me just all the like they become friends of mine, right? Because 4 weeks on a consistent base, like it's you develop a relationship with the person, and you know, just like your situation, we go into non-Mons related stuff, and it's so like, and it's so but yeah, for those who are listening, we paused for a sec, so I actually don't remember what we were discussing before. But to close out, like, oh yeah, I think we were saying the boot camp. It's funny because those who join it, those who do it usually are sometimes in a position where it's probably the least. It's not like, oh, my life was, you know, I was floating on cotton candy clouds at the time, and it's actually usually something in the background, and that is a result of some little nugget or some mental shift. And to kind of, as we close out, reveal a question, I'm going to do a Q&A vid whenever people dropped it on the community post, so I was going to answer this there. But to close out, you know, oftentimes for those who made it this far, oftentimes you'll hear like, oh, you know, Jam, you know, stuff you say reminds me of something my professor says, or I've had actual college professors utilize a lot of the protocols that we talk about here, and the questionnaires and things like that. And the reason a lot of times those things are so parallel is because they are. It's no accident. Even when CG, me and you were doing the thing, even though we're discussing Mons, if I notice a particular pattern, and even in mindset or attitude, I'll sprinkle in things in there that are non-Mons related but are Mons related. And I do that in my videos. I've always done it. And you know, the reason for that is that my offline work is that I work with guys in particular ages, say probably 21 to like early 30s, or I'll get early 30s, but usually like 21 to 29ish. And they come to me when they have very specific problems that have a psychological root. So, you know, I'm having a discipline issue. The discipline issue is mental, not physical, because all actions start in the mind. And so it's one of those things where I never really talk about it because it's a weird thing of figuring out. Because I started that after my channel was way before that. So I started my channel when I was a teenager. So it's not like that's always been the case. But as things progressed offline, and I'd get so many messages on Discord, I'm like, in doing the work I do offline, and starting to notice so many parallels online. And that's when it clicked of like, oh, you are the avatar phenomena, which is that who you are offline blends into everything else you do. Whether it be Mons, the guy who rages on the ladder, that's who he is offline. His emotional control, his, you know, bruisable ego, all those things are actually within the person, not contextual to Mons. And so if I was like, okay, well, if it can go where who you are offline can bleed into Mons, is it possible that the transformations you have within Mons can impact you offline? And so that's where all the sprinkling and testing over the past 4 years or so, talk about battery tests, right? It feels like 4 years of mental testing. See, okay, what occurs if I don't tell this person about this? What will happen to their points and what will happen offline? And I've tested that so many times, and there has not been one time where the person was worse off or didn't get a drastic transformational change offline. The job thing is very common. Fitness is very common too. And romantic relationships are very common. I can't tell you how many guys have taken the boot camp, not talked about anything but Mons, but career change, lost a ton of weight, or met their girlfriend or wife. And that's because the same Mons can change your brain offline. It changes your brain anyway. But then that change translates because the brain never leaves the body. It's not like when you turn Showdown off and you mystically become a new brain or something. Like whatever alterations occur are permanent, you know, for the most part, right? Using that lightly. And so it's like, even with this, and just to share that with the audience, the reason the content, my community posts, the academy even structured all like this is because underneath it all, that's always been my objective. I don't usually talk about that side of my life to my Pokemon guys. I've brought it up a little bit more recently, because I wanted to keep the brand centered on Mons. But more and more, I've been getting a lot of messages from guys who want more direct, like, the Mons are cool, but I actually have a problem with this very specific thing offline that I'd prefer to just work on directly, not. And so it's been on me to think like, man, do I want to even reveal that side of things? But every time I have, and I'd have clients, quite a few a month, and I'm like, man, if I never said that, I mean, some dire situations where, you know, like, just I think, man, what if I just kept it to myself? And so, you know, hearing your story, because I've had my doubts at times of whether or not this is worth doing. You know, maintaining this all. If anyone cares, if it even matters, right? Especially when I could just dedicate all my resources to my offline work. But more and more, as of late, it's been feeling like the connection I have with the guys online, the guy behind the avatar, has been just as strong, if not stronger than even some of the offline situation. And I'm not sure where this is all gonna go, but I say all that to say, CG, you coming on and sharing your journey. Because I remember vividly, as I said, if you could look back at the screenshot, what you wrote down, and to see 2 years later. I don't know if you consider yourself to be one of the best draft league players ever yet, but the other ones, the other ones came to fruition. It's just amazing, man, and I'm really humbled and grateful that you decided to do the bootcamp, and gave me the opportunity to, in the little way, be a part of your journey. It's very fulfilling, and I appreciate that, and then appreciate you taking the time to come and share that with whoever is supposed to hear this.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I really appreciate you doing the boot camp and offering it. And I'm so glad that I decided to participate in it. And I learned so many things from it, and just those having those questions and asking those questions that you teach and preach, they also do help you in life and help you think more analytically and more process oriented, and it does help just outside of Pokemon too.
100%.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And with that, guys, that concludes this episode of On the Contrary. TG's in the academy. So if you ever, well, if he's open to it, then you know, you can shoot him a message if you have any questions or just wanting some clarity. He's always been one of like the most helpful guys ever, as you heard in this story. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, please reach out.
yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't mind. Yeah, that's gonna be it. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, share this with somebody you think might benefit, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.